Software management plans, question mark. Sort of crazy. So Aaron chaired, I scribed, waffle. Attendee, sorry, I didn't catch everyone there. The David W. was David Worth, not David Warren. He wasn't in two places. But we have data management plans. Or we should have data management plans. Should we have software management plans as well? And if so, what should they look like? Kind of where we started. So, I'm trying to change the slide with a device which isn't pointing at my laptop. That's silly, isn't it? So conclusions first. Yes! Unequivocally, yes, software management plans should exist. Research projects should have them. A discussion we had was identifying when when a research project intends to produce software or thinks it might produce software somewhere along the way is not necessarily obvious. A data management plan is probably much easier to identify up front. Your research project is probably going to be producing data. That's kind of what it's for. It's not always obvious that you're going to produce software either as a primary research output or potentially as a useful spin-off. So identifying what you need there, what level of plan you should put in place, isn't necessarily obvious, but nevertheless, some form of planning we reckon is pretty important. And making people think about this up front at proposal stage is a key first step in getting people to think about it from day one of the project. If you're going to start writing even modest pieces of software, well, do it properly. And this is really just good software engineering. Get yourself a configuration management, at the very least a source code management system set up from day one. Far, far easier to do it piecemeal as you go than try and gather everything together in a big bang at the end and say, oh, we got some software, what are we going to do with it? I don't know, there's a bit over there. But be organised from day one. Going to be much easier in the long run. And that's something that is an obvious thing to write into a software management plan. And we noted that it's potentially more complicated to write a software management plan to capture all the configuration information that you need. It's not just code you need to capture, it's potentially data that you need to run the code on, it's designs, it's documentation, it's environment, it's all sorts of things. There are many more configuration items that you need to care about capturing, potentially for less obvious value than for research data. So it's a more complicated decision, we reckon, about how much effort you should put into a software management plan versus a data management plan. Nevertheless, it's a good idea. And there are a couple of models which could well be useful here. The STFC SoftPres approach, the software preservation study, that's kind of built on that as one of its foundations. There are things here that we reckon we should look at. And there was agreement, there's plenty of agreement in this meeting of all stuff that SSI should do. Okay, which is great. So we've got quite a few actions coming away from this meeting. Here's one of them. Templates. Software management plans, yes, we think they're a good idea. Yes, we think they should exist in research projects. What should they look like? Why doesn't SSI look at creating some templates for these things? And there are, as I said, many places to look. Even at a sort of a three-level approach, which maybe I'll come to when we get to the discussions, different levels of detail that you might require. And Aaron suggested that David's ETF money could fund a workshop on software management planning. If we have an approach we think it's going to be useful, then taking it out into a roadshow would be good. And ETF's got loads of money to spend, and we'll send you a proposal in due course. So I can flip through the discussion very briefly. General feeling, yes, we should have one. In the same way that data are regarded as a potential output of a research project, so should software. Identifying it, as I say, is not necessarily quite as easy. Plans will change, sure. Plans are allowed to change, that's fine. They should be reviewed regularly, of course. This is kind of just good practice. The assumption behind a data management plan is that the data you're going to produce are actually going to be useful to somebody else beyond the project. You don't always recognize that of software, so that's, again, one of the trickiness that comes in there. This is where the idea of sort of 3 levels of software that a research project is likely to produce. There's Perl scripts that's just produced just to get something done, and they're not interesting or fine. There's software which may be needed to validate data, for instance. Maybe if data are the key output of the project. Some piece of software which validates that data, which helps back up the experiment. That's worth thinking about preserving, managing in some intelligent way. And actually there may be a piece of software which was not only useful for this research, but is potentially useful for other groups as well. And that's the 3rd level of importance there. Templates, yes. Got to make sure the templates aren't sort of just cut and paste and yes, we will do that. And, anyone who's written the impact section of a European proposal may understand that there's a danger of ticking boxes here. The MRC seem to be in the lead in terms of research councils of talking about maintaining software. They're starting to discuss this. The research outputs group that Neil pointed out, Neil G, they've already started discussing software more generally as a research output, which is great. Should it be included as part of a data plan? Not necessarily the same sorts of criteria you'd apply. As I mentioned, capturing software is actually quite complex for less obvious return. All of this is going to aid the recognition of software as a valid piece of the research project, a valid tool, a valid instrument, in the same way that other research artifacts would be. And these are some of the conclusions. Following a plan is not quite the same as having a plan, sure, but good software. A lot of it comes down to adopting good software engineering projects, even if you think you're not going to be producing significant software. If you find out that your software is actually useful, it'll be so much easier if you've done it right from day one. And we're all going to have to do more with less. So is it possible to demonstrate if you spend time writing a software management plan, you've added real value? This is the general sort of, it's not easy, and this is the general, how do you measure the value of a manager generally? I ask myself this every day. Do I add value to the projects I manage? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe if I wasn't here, nobody would care. But tailor these things to the level of your project. And you'd think there would be standards and languages for describing configuration items, but it doesn't seem to be very well developed. That's something that we should really think about. So I think that's the essence of